Don, we brought on my new good friend, Tom. Brother, what do you think?
And that was so cool. Like, just to hear about his path from just enjoying games as a kid to becoming a professional, software developer engineer here.
Dude, I had so many friends growing up who wanted that. I want to make video games. I think 0% of them made it happen, but here we have a guy who followed through with it, realized, and he talks about in this interview how it's fun, but it is work, and you got to get ready for the grind, and he explains that and a whole lot more in this episode.
For sure. Yeah, I just want to get right into it and share the story with everybody.
All right, guys, give it up for Tom. I got that button. Don, I feel very happy because it's not often I am the guy who brings in the artiste, the creative type. But not only did I get someone, but I got a banger of a guest today, my man.
Sweet. Yeah, introduce away.
Well, let me just say, I've known him for years because his daughter went to my school. She's like best friends with my daughter. But it was always, drop off, pick up. You say, hey, I could tell he was probably into games. So, there's no time when you're working with the kids. And then I go to his daughter's birthday party last weekend. And he's wearing an Epic Games shirt, which I know because of my son. That's Fortnite. And so I asked him if he plays it. And he's like, play it? I basically made it. And then it took all of my willpower not to ask him a gajillion questions. Like, I was literally struggling. And waiting for this moment for now when I can finally find out your story. What's up, Tom?
What's going on? It's a pleasure to tell all about my time in the games industry.
So I want to dive deep into the early years, but first, just can you give a rundown of like what you're working on now and some of the big projects of the past? We'll come back to them, but just to give people an idea of where you are in this world of video games.
Sure. Well, currently I'm at Epic Games, as you have learned recently. I'm not specifically on the Fortnite project. I'm actually working over on a new project that is a partnership with Disney. And so that's kind of where I'm working right now. I do split some time over on Fortnite. In fact, I'm working on a feature for Fortnite right now that will get brought over to the Disney stuff. So it's kind of a lot of fun being able to work across the whole thing. I mean, there's so many different teams and projects going on at Epic Games, so it's pretty fun to be able to move around.
Incredible, man, incredible. He's living the dream, dude. He's living the dream.
If young me knew where current me would be, oh man,
proud,
young
Tom.
me would be very fanboy.
And isn't that like the greatest thing in the world too, man? Is to know that your younger self would have looked up to your older self.
For sure.
That gives me great pride.
Yeah. Honestly, the biggest thing of pride for me is the kids. It's my kids. Like now they're like, my oldest is 8 and she plays a Switch and she's into games and like seeing her like realize that, oh man, my dad makes awesome video games. Like he's got a cool job. Like now it's like I'm like the back to school where like the when they have they bring your parents to school that day. He's like now I'm like the hero.
Yeah, no embarrassment there, dude. Do you guys ever hit up some couch co-op together? You guys play some games together, or is she just doing her own thing?
Not a lot of couch co-op right now. I'm working on finishing our basement to build a game room. We don't have a whole lot of a room the way our like living room set up to like do like the more like kind of physical games like Nintendo games that she likes to play. And so I'm trying to build a space that like gives us more room to like move around and be able to play that stuff. But we do play like some stuff here and there. But we haven't gotten to do a lot of that bonding.
I look forward for you because I've experienced it with my own boys is going through a full campaign story. We beat Rayman, we beat Castle Crashers, a bunch of these couch co-ops, and knowing you defeated it with your boys or with your girls, it's such a good feeling, man.
Yep. We do Mario Kart now. I'll get on my
Big
Switch,
time.
and she'll get on her Switch, and either we'll play together or play against each other, or whatever. Like the mood strikes. But,
that's awesome, man.
Yeah, it's definitely fun getting into that finally.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. So let's take it back to to the Wayback Machine.
Yeah,
huh?
yeah. Like what got you started on this path?
Well, it was an interesting journey. I was not always a game developer. I actually worked as an automotive technician for years. I just based on the way like I exited high school, like college wasn't for me at the time.
Sure.
And my dad had always said, like, you'd be a great engineer. Like, you should go for that. But I also had a creative side.
Yeah.
Did you hate school growing up? It just wasn't your jam?
I didn't hate school, but both my parents were high school teachers. And so, like, it becomes really hard in that kind of house. Either they're more hands-off or they're very hands-on, right? Like,
No in between.
teaching parents. There's no in between. And so, like, they were very hands-on. And so, like, school became like everything, right? And so I just kind of got burnt out on it. And then I had my mom unfortunately passed away of cancer back when I was in high school, and so that had a huge impact on me. And so I needed time to step away. It had me in a bad place.
Sure,
right? And so it's like school just. It became this like constant reminder because she was like a teacher and stuff, and then like you could tell like teachers would kind of treat you different. And my father was a teacher at the school I went to, so that made it even worse. And so it's like I needed kind of time away from school.
Treating you different, like almost like a pity type of thing that just.
I don't want to say pity, but like walk around more on eggshells and kind of like more worried about you and what they say around you. And it's like, I mean, like, that's not how you shouldn't treat me different. It's gonna make it worse, right?
Yeah, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. And so like it was a tough time, and I played a lot of video games back then and got heavy into music and stuff like that. And so that was kind of like my outlet was, I played guitar and piano and stuff.
What kind of games are we talking?
Oh, let's see. That would have been. So I was big into Doom back then. So I was a PC gamer.
Yeah.
I mean, I had the consoles.
One of the originals.
So I was lucky that my dad, and this kind of leads up to where I am today. My dad instilled computers into me very, very young. So like, it wasn't common. Like computers were in every household. Like I was one of the few kids in school that had a computer.
Yeah.
And so like I learned to program and did a lot of that kind of stuff myself. I would mod Doom and I'd play a lot of PC games before it was cool because most people couldn't afford PC back then. They were like $3,000 for like the just run of the mill like 286.
I didn't even know back then that you could play games like that on a PC.
You could. They weren't great compared to today's standards.
Yeah.
But I mean, yes, I started early with that stuff. I mean, I was fortunate enough like to be raised in a pretty privileged household.
Yeah.
My parents provided for us, and I started a Nintendo back when I was like 5. Like I had the NES, and like I just fell in love with video games and played video games most of my time. There's kind of like that period during college time. Like I didn't originally go to college, but I kind of got into the party scene, music,
the best part of it
and all that stuff. Yeah, and so kind of video games took a little bit of a break, but not for more than like five years.
Those original games that you played, what would hit you right in the heart if one of your girls actually played through the whole thing and defeated it like you back in the day?
Legend of Zelda.
The original,
the original
Legend of Zelda.
Because it was hard. It was a hard. I mean, those games back then were just hard. Period.
For sure.
I mean,
for
like,
sure.
If you like Metroid and Mega Man, like they were controller.
Yeah, but those were defeatable. Sometimes you'd get something like, "Oh, I like X-Men. Let's get an X-Men game." And without Game Genie, with Game Genie, you couldn't get past the second level.
Well, I mean, that was like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh,
like,
the amount of time.
Never gonna beat
Once
that
you're
game.
swimming with that seaweed, you are dead. You know what happened to me with that is I was using Game Genie. Infinite lives, can't get hurt, and I get so far and I end up in the seaweed and it just shocks me continuously. I couldn't get out of it, so once again the seaweed took me. Nothing I can do about it.
But if she could sit herself down and play Legend of Zelda like through like I'd be so proud because I mean that was back when you had to like wait for the Nintendo Power magazine.
For sure,
fold out the maps that were in the back. I mean there was no way you were just like beating these games. Like
no Google.
There was and there was no like the games weren't good at telling you what your next thing is, right? Like games have come such a long way since like I was a kid that like now you can kind of like the game teaches you how to play the game. They didn't do that back in the day.
Yeah, you got to figure that stuff out.
They threw you in the deep end. Good luck.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and if you could without Game Genie or without the magazine beat The Legend of Zelda, you've done something with your life.
Oh yeah, I'll even let her have the magazine. if she'll sit down and play through that, like the kids her in her era, like they're used to games being more fun, less challenging.
Yes. Oh, it's so disappointing.
It is, but on the other hand, like if you think about back in our day, like games were not like as mainstream as they are today.
Yeah.
There's a reason. They're much more approachable today. Right?
That's
like
true.
There's games for everybody. There's still super difficult games like Demon Souls and like
that's
Dark Souls.
now that's
Elden
different
Ring.
level, man. That is
Right.
nuts. That
But
game.
you can find those challenging games that are really hard, right, and fulfill that need for the people that like me. But then there's more casual games, and even not so much casual games, but games that are easier to learn and develop your skills as it gets harder. I mean, that's magic for kids these days.
Well,
Like,
maybe you can tell me what this is. I started playing because I wanted to do a couch co-op with Casey. He's always on Fortnite. I was like, let's check out Resident Evil 5. And we get pretty far. He's loving it. He's freaking out. We're bonding. And then we get to some bosses. They kill us. Bosses kill us a third time. I say, I think I got it figured out, Casey. We got this. He won't go back to it. We lost 3 times, and he's just like, I'm done.
Oh,
My God, dude, no.
I mean, that's just how some people enjoy the games, though. Like,
Yeah, teach their own, I guess.
after making games for 15 years and being in the industry as long as I have, like, you start to learn and appreciate the different like facets to video games, right? Like, there's this kind of this schism in the video game community. So like gamers, players, all that stuff, where it's like you're not a hardcore gamer if you play on the phone and all this. Like, there's all this controversy.
Sure.
Listen, gamer is such a loaded term these days. Like, if you enjoy playing games, you're a gamer in my mind.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
My wife, like, she's like, I'm not a gamer. I was like, yeah, but you play them puzzle games on your phone all the time. I was like, what do you think you're doing? It's video games. Like, it's become like such an ingrained part of our life.
Right.
Like, games have gamified normal things in life, right? Like Pokemon Go and like Monster Hunter now were games that were about trying to get people out into the world, right? Instead of sitting on a couch playing video games or something like that. Like, they used augmented reality and GPS to get you to go like walk around and all that stuff, and like that's huge. And like, there's a lot of people that like that have been proven to have lost weight and become just like, you know, emotionally and mentally more stable and better because it got them out of their house, right?
Yeah, or how about the VR? They're doing boxing fights and
My son was just telling me that his girlfriend has a sleep app on her phone, and that it's she gets rewarded for good sleep habits with like Pokemon and stuff. And I'm like, get out of here, you know. And he was like, yeah, it was great when she just dropped it down the side of the bed, you know, and then had to go fish for it so that she can make sure that she gets her Pokemon.
I mean, like, they gamify everything. I have so I have a productivity app on my phone. It's like, you know, like a to-do kind of app.
Yeah.
But it's literally gamified.
Sure.
Right? Like, it's turning my tasks into like quests, and like if I'm checking things off in time, I'm earning XP that I can then go like spend and stuff in the app. And like it gets shared, like your not your tasks, but like your standings and all that. Your stats get shared, so that you're kind of competing with other people
doing like the
for
dishes, the
productivity.
final boss.
Yeah. But I mean, it's games have become something that's so like ingrained in our society that like it's kind of awesome that it's like spreading out into these other areas.
Well, when we were kids, I mean, games were for kids, you know?
Yeah,
And now I think just as many adults, if not more, play games than kids, you know?
Sure.
I mean, like I said, my wife will absolutely reject the term that she plays games, but I'm like, you do.
She's in denial.
I mean, part of that comes with the stigma, and I'm kind of glad that that's going away.
I was going to say, is
Like,
there still a sick
There still
stigma?
is. Like, in fact, when Twitter was still Twitter and not the X stuff, I was on there and I got into it with somebody. I forget who it was. It was some like influencer type of girl or whatever, and she put up there like #1 red flag for a guy is he plays video games. I'm like, you must lead a lonely life, because in our day and age, I see the stats. I live in the industry.
That knocks out.
You're gonna have a hard time finding yourself a man these days that doesn't
else in
play
the wrong world.
some form of games.
For sure.
Right? Like,
For sure.
and so yeah, this stigma still exists of like this like basement dweller, like the neck beer time, like in the basement.
I've had those as friends. Have you guys had any of those as friends?
Yes,
You go down and it's real dark and there's pizza boxes.
I was that guy.
I mean, the stereotype
high school I was
came
there.
for
I knew I loved
came
you.
from it came from a place. It's like, but like at the time I was like Commodore 64 and Nintendo. I think were my drug of choice at the time. But yeah, it was and it was in a basement, and it smelled like oil all the time because of the oil burner.
Yeah, see, my gaming setup was in the basement when I was a kid because that's where my dad had it all set up.
Yeah,
so it was, and he used to do woodwork, and so it just like smelled like wood chips and wood shavings.
Nice.
All the time. I mean, it's better than motor oil, I guess.
Yeah.
But after a while, you start to realize you just don't like the smell of wood anymore.
Hey, dude. So let's take it back. So okay, you might not do video games. You're doing automotive stuff. What ends up happening? How was your life in the automotives, and what came next?
So like I said, I had taken a break from like games and all that kind of stuff, and I had a car now, and so I got into the car scene, right? Mm-hmm. So like I was fortunate that I had saved up money working and everything, and my dad helped me out getting a Mustang. So my first car, a 5.0 Mustang. So like I was hot stuff back then.
Yeah.
And so I got into cars, and when you're young at that age and you don't have a lot of money, the only way you're going to upgrade your car and do cool stuff is if you learn how to do it yourself. Sure. Right? Yeah. And so like that's kind of what happened is I started like learn how to do it myself while I was working at the local music store in Berlin, and I was making money, and then I started, people were like, well, hey, can you do the brakes on my car and stuff like that. And so I started.
How did you teach yourself?
Well, YouTube wasn't big back then.
That's why I'm asking. I'm like,
I bought manuals like
the Chilton guide,
the Chilton's guide,
yeah.
And so like
Haynes,
fortunately I was learning on my Mustang, and so like Mustangs are super popular. So there was lots of like Mustang magazines that like all told you how to like upgrade your brakes and all this stuff. And so I learned just from that kind of stuff. And my uncle he used to race cars, and so he helped teach me some. My grandfather did. So I learned like here and there, but I was always good with my hands. I was good with tools. And so, I got into that, and I was, upgrading my car and all that stuff. And I moved with my girlfriend at the time down to Salisbury, Maryland. Mm-hmm. And I was actually working at dirt tracks, working on cars and racing cars down there.
Nice.
And then working at the dealership during the day. And just did that for it ended up being like 6-7 years that I was doing that. And it just takes a big toll on your body. It's just climbing under cars. Like it's not race cars, right? Like you're not doing that's the fun. You're generally not making money off of that. You're making money fixing mom and pop's
I never realized how physically taxing it is.
It is. I mean, everything's heavy on cars and stuff, right? Like and so it's just, especially like when you gotta like climb under the dashboard, replace fuses, or do work like in the air conditioning underneath the dashboard and stuff. Like it's just it takes a toll on you. And I always never just felt fulfilled by it, right? Like I always had kind of that chatter in the back of my head from my father of like, you should go for engineering and all this stuff. And I wasn't ready to go that path.
Yeah.
But I did have a lot of creativity. I was big into creative arts, and like I used to draw. And
did you have a visual in your head of what would fulfill you at that time?
So I thought about doing filmmaking and photography and stuff, and so I had saved up money and went to the Art Institute in Philadelphia. I moved back up here and went to the Art Institute in Philly for photography and filmmaking and digital media and stuff, because I liked games, but games was notoriously hard to get into, like for a job. And usually like back at that time, like you had to start like Q&A, like, bug testing and like earn your way up to the top, and it's very hard.
Is it because there's not too many jobs, or because everyone wants those jobs?
Back then it was because there wasn't a whole lot of jobs, right? So this was before the big boom. So like this is like the .com boom era. So like there's computer jobs, but not in games. There's computer jobs in like AOL and the internet and all that kind of stuff that was blowing up, and so games was much harder. And I was like, I don't really want to like program and do stuff like in finance or any of those kind of areas. Like it didn't interest me. And so I never really took computer seriously at that time because I was like, well, there's no creativity in that for me.
Yeah.
So I went to art school, and it actually worked out well. Like I still had to do mechanic, but I was able to kind of wean away from that, and I started doing wedding photography and some of my own like digital media kind of jobs, like graphic designing, and started doing web stuff. And that's where it kind of led me back to computers. Was like, I originally started doing film, but after a couple of years, like that was when digital all of a sudden like boomed, right? So I remember getting a Canon 10D. It was the first digital DSLR camera that was reasonably affordable for a human being to own. And I remember I saved up and I got that, and I started moving over to digital, and so I started coming back into the fold around technology and everything. And that's when a lot of this like digital media started to explode, where the intersection of art and expression and creativity and computers kind of started really converging.
What year and how old were you?
So this was in the late 2000s. So I'd be coming up in my late 20s.
Okay, talking like 2008, 2009.
Yeah. Like it started really 2005 is when it started to pick up.
Yeah.
By 2008, 2009, yes. Like it was like we're rolling. That's like Halo's been out. Like we're into Xbox 360, Halo 2, all that stuff. Like it's really taken off, right? And now companies are starting to say, hey, it's not about just a bunch of geeky programmers building these games now. We have the technology to build really good looking art.
Yeah.
Because if you think about back in the day, like NES and that stuff, like the art, a lot of that programmers built that, right? The art wasn't complicated. You didn't have to be an artist in order to make art for video games back then. But now you're in the area where like digital art is just so like advancing and rapid pace with
It was like right around when like Medal of Honor and stuff was coming out.
Yeah, that stuff. And so there was kind of like it was that precipice where I was like, oh hey, games are gonna be a thing. Right, like, and jobs are going to be a thing, and so I, the last bit of savings I had went into going back to Camden County College. And I went there
back
for
to school.
went back when I was 20. I was 26 when I started going back and working. So it took me, instead of the normal 2 years if you were going full time, like it took me 4. Yeah. And by the time I was like 28, 29, like I was like, I can do this. Like this is fun. And
what years were you at Camden County College?
I was there from it would have been 2006 through 2008, 9, somewhere in there.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I put myself through the associate's degree, and I knew that wasn't going to be enough, right? Like, and games still wasn't at a point where it was easy to get in. It's still not easy to get in, but it is easier now.
What do you mean not enough? Like you didn't learn enough, or you don't have that piece of paper saying you can get the job enough?
Partly that. So at this point in time, so this is, like I said, this is about 2008. Yeah, about 2008. But a lot of companies, they still want to see that stupid paper that says you have a BS in computer science or a BS in something related to engineering computers. And so there was still that stigma, and it was really hard to like get in. Now, that's gone. If you can show talent and capabilities, you'll get a job even if you don't have a degree these days, which is great.
Yeah.
But when I was trying to do this, like degree was still first and foremost. Associates wasn't enough to get you in. I could do IT, or I could do like help desk, or even like entry programming. But like the bigger companies, like it's competitive to get in because a lot of people want to make games, and there still wasn't a ton of game jobs yet back then. And so it was one of those things where you had to stand out. And so
did you already have an idea in your head of what you wanted to do in this business?
Yeah, I wanted to build Halo.
Very specific.
I wanted to work on Halo. Halo was one of my favorite games back then. It brought me back into the gaming back in like the mid-2000s.
Do you mean like you've played Halo 1 and 2, now you want to work on 3? Is that
so? Yeah, so I started with Halo Combat Evolved. So that was back when the original Xbox first came out. Microsoft made the big announcement they were entering gaming, and it was a huge thing. And so I ended up getting in that ecosystem because I liked Microsoft. Microsoft was a dream for my dad for me to work at Microsoft. And so now that I was going back to school and taking it seriously, he got real excited about it. Spoiler alert, I ended up meeting that dream of his. But yeah, so he ended up getting me an Xbox for Christmas one year because he's Mr. Microsoft, loves the company and all that stuff, and Bill Gates and everything. And so he got me an Xbox, and so I got into Combat Evolved, and I was like, oh, this is a whole new world, right? Like I the first person shooters I played was like Doom and stuff.
Well, I'm sorry, what game were you playing?
Doom and Unreal Tournament were the original first.
What
person
was
shooters.
the new one you got?
Halo Combat.
Oh,
Evolved.
you Halo, okay.
Yeah. And
Different
so,
world.
Yeah, it was a whole different world for me because like this was the first real like modern first person shooter where you could look around anywhere, shoot anywhere, like you weren't like on rails like in Doom. And so it was kind of really eye opening, right? And like it's not open world by today's standards, but like it was still big. Those maps were big, especially when you first landed on the ring in Halo Combat Evolved. Like it was like, oh man,
Was that like the first game where you had to worry about someone shooting from up high,
Yeah,
also behind
yep,
you?
Yep,
Like,
yeah, that was
kind of
Halo.
pressure, you know?
Yep, that was one of the first. Call of Duty. And so like I was like, man, if I want to make games, I want to make a game like Halo, right? Like, and so that was kind of like my North Star. It didn't have to be Halo, but I wanted to make a game like Halo, right? So that was my North Star. And so, you know, I realized that coming out of Camden County College, like it wouldn't be enough to get to that kind of level where it's like Microsoft or Sony, one of those like top tier. And so I at Drexel was a university in Philadelphia, very well known for their engineering program, and they were one of the few that had a game program as well that sat alongside engineering. Just about every other school, Rutgers. I looked at Rutgers, Princeton, Penn State. I did really well in my 2 years at Camden County, so I had the potential to get these scholarships to bigger schools. So I was like, well, the sky's the limit. I'm looking where I can, right? And so I looked at all these schools, University of Penn, all those places, but all of them were very focused on, just hyper-focused on computer science. Like none of them really had any kind of like electives I could even take that were game-related. They would have game programs, but they shoved them over on the art side. And we're like, well, you know, more than half of a game is engineering, right? Like art is the visual part of it, but there's so much behind the scenes that's all engineering and technical that makes it all happen. And so it was always weird that all these schools like split it. Well,
They
Drexel
didn't get it.
Drexel didn't do it that way. So Drexel had the art focus side was in the digital media program, but that crossed over into computer science. They had to take some programming classes to learn how to like script and do the things you need to do to build a game. And just like that, on the computer science side, they had us cross over for game stuff to learn some of the art side, like how do animations get authored. We didn't actually have to create them. We had to understand how they work, right? Because my job as an engineer in game development isn't necessarily just to build the game, it's to build the tools and technologies to enable the artists to build the game. Because truthfully, like they're the ones that are what is flashy and what you see when you experience is you know, designers and artists. But without us, they can't do it, right? They don't have the capability to build it, right? And so I ended up picking Drexel, and I got a scholarship to go there. And so I was able to, because I was smart with my savings, I was able to go to Drexel. Expensive school, but you know the scholarship helped a ton. And I put in 3 years there because they're a co-op program. The school's a little different. They go year round. It's quarterly, so you have quarters instead of semesters there. And the way it works is for your first 2 years, you're just in classes. But I bypass that because I'm a transfer. I already have my associates. So I'm coming in as a sophomore. And so the way they work, they're a 5-year school. So it starts as a freshman. It was freshman, and then I forget what they called it, but there's like a stage between freshman and sophomore. So I think it was freshman, pre-sophomore, sophomore, junior, senior, right? Because it was a 5-year program. And so for the first 2 years, you're in just classes, and then you do co-op cycles. Meaning you do 6 months of classes, 6 months you work, like paid as a requirement from anyone who wants to recruit students there to do the co-op. You have to pay them. It's not free internships. And so I was looking for my first internship, and originally I was looking at like Lockheed Martin, and there was it used to be called CompSci. Now it's I forget what E3, I think, or 3E. They're both military contractors. That's what's kind of was big in this area. We're not too far from Virginia and DC, and so there's a lot of like military type jobs or what's called fintech, which is financial tech. Well, we had a rare opportunity in the game program where they were going to take 2 engineers and 2 art/design from our school to Microsoft for an internship, right? And so it was highly competitive. And like they got all kinds of applications. And it ended up coming down to me and a few other candidates, and I ended up getting the opportunity.
What were they looking for?
They were looking for 2 engineers, like I said. So I ended up being one of the engineers that went.
In an engineer, what were they looking
just
for?
anything. And when you're coming out of college, like there's not a whole lot of specialty that are necessarily looking for in engineering. Because the way it is, like in your college career for computer science or something like that, it's very broad. Like there's a lot that you have to learn, like computational science and just mathematics and all these different things that are involved, logic.
So I'm just curious, with all these other people gunning for your position, what made you stand out?
I sold myself well.
Do you think it was the verbal part of it? Just
a lot of So I did a very good interview with his name is Rick Martinez. He's actually was one of the original creators of Fable back on Xbox from Lion's Head out in the UK. So he was a designer there, one of the creative leads, and so I interviewed with him, and we just hit it off really well. Like I showed a lot of passion, and that's one of the things that game, at least when I'm looking to hire someone in the games industry, like you're looking for people that have passion, right? Because it's not an easy job. It sounds like a dream job, but it's not an easy job, right? Like there's a lot of times where you're going to work extra hard hours, long hours. You're going to have to do aspects of game development you don't necessarily aren't your strength or something you enjoy.
Do you find that there's a lot of kids out there who say like, I love video games, I want to be a video game maker, and they just don't have a clue?
There are. And I think that's kind of one of the big things that is a misconception in the industry is like, it's all like, fun and games. Well, it's not all fun and games. It absolutely is. And it is definitely, I would never choose a different career.
But it's work. It's work.
But it is absolutely work. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been times when I was shipping Halo 5. That was one of the hardest times. I mean, I was working 100 hours a week. Like we had some
100
cots.
hours a week?
We had cots that we would rotate time in the studio.
You want to be a game maker. All right.
Now, to be fair, that's on the extreme.
Okay.
That is probably the only time I've worked that much on a given release, but it does happen, right? It does happen, and it really depends on the studio and like what's that studio's culture, how well is it run. Like a lot of it's out of your hands. As
I imagine there's a lot of pressure on that game with how successful.
Was that due to deadlines and
some of it's deadlines, some of it's so it's difficult to work for a place that is a game company that is in a greater umbrella, right? So like people over at Sony deal with this, people at Xbox and Microsoft deal with this. When you're looking at the entity that is Xbox, that's the gaming organization in a much bigger company that is Microsoft, right? And so Microsoft has many investors. They have many different avenues that they're pursuing, AI, enterprise stuff, like Windows itself. Like there's lots of different areas of the company. And so they have to balance. It's like a balancing act, right? And so they have to keep their investors happy. And so what that can mean is a lot of times direction and like what is expected or needed for a product can sometimes come from people that are not in touch with games as much, right? Because they're investors, right? Yeah. They're just like, oh, well, that game over there did really, really well. Do something like that. Make Halo like that. Not realize that, like, well, then Halo loses its soul, and it's going to lose the following that it does have. Like, and there's no guarantee you're going to pick up this following of this other game that they're looking at that's shiny, right?
The suits trying to take over.
And so with Microsoft, that is a problem, and with Sony. And, like, I'm not knocking Xbox. I worked there for, 12, 13 years. Like, I had a great time there. It's a great company to work for. But the reality is that when you're in games, you are just a number in a greater math puzzle, right? Of how are we going to be profitable this year, right? And so what that can mean is it can mean like, hey, Halo hasn't shipped fast enough. Ship it a year sooner and cut stuff, right? Like, and so these are the things you have to face. And it can cause a lot of this turmoil, right? Like where it's like, oh, we weren't expecting to ship until next year. Now we need to ship a year earlier. We have to cut a bunch of stuff, but that also going to mean we're going to have to crunch because even cutting that stuff's not going to eliminate a year's worth of work, right?
Like you cut that stuff, and that also affect gameplay and story and all that kind of stuff.
One of the biggest controversies back when I was there was when they cut couch co-op. So the split screen, right? So
I'm huge on that.
so am I. And that was a painful conversation to have. But I was actually one of the engineers was in the room that had to vote yes, cut it, because
And you were in the minority?
No, I mean we were in the majority. We couldn't do it.
Oh, you said cut it.
Yeah.
Why, Tom? Why?
Because if we were going to ship the game, we had to.
Yeah.
Right. Like there was not enough time to. So Halo 5 was the release launch title. Even though we didn't launch right next to Xbox One, the most recent one, we didn't launch right next to it, but we needed to launch within the launch window of that console, which means a year. We have to within that year, and like we cannot miss that, right? Like, and so, and because we're a launch title, and the big push was to be 60 frames a second. That means performance in these games is a big concern. That's what's also on engineers, right? Like when you're talking about hundreds of millions of little triangles that we're drawing to a screen, like that takes time. Takes a lot of time, yes. And then running AI so that the enemies that you're facing are actually challenging and interesting to fight instead of like, this patterns like that you can easily identify, like having better AI to make it more challenging, which is demanding.
And I think it'd be fair to if you could explain to the listeners, because we were mentioning open worlds, and for someone who has never played video games, is not a fan, they probably have no idea what we're talking about. But the open world concept in gaming, it's huge.
Yes.
Could you explain what we mean by that when we say that you are developing open worlds?
So in the mid 2000s through the early 20 teens, we were in the world what's considered linear gameplay. So think of like Halo 1, 2, and 3, Gears of War, Mario, even Zelda to an extent. Like Zelda was a little bit more open, but it was still like on rails to an extent. And so like there was a reason that this was the case, right? We didn't have the technology and the computers weren't powerful enough to allow for us to have worlds be as big as you would want, right? To just be able to go out and explore, right? So like we couldn't do things like Elder Scrolls Skyrim, where it's like you could run in one direction for like an hour and a half and not get through the map, right?
Insane.
Same thing with like the Fallout.
I've been playing
games.
the new God of War. It's like, my God, everything's so beautiful.
Well, so we didn't have the technology, and we didn't really get that until the mid 2010s, where computers started to get fast enough, and we had some breakthroughs in just engineering and how we build games, right? So like some things that started out as mathematical theories and white papers, we were able to bring those in and improve how we render a bunch of stuff and draw it to the screen, and improve how fast we can walk through all the characters in the game and run their AI. And chips became more parallelizable, meaning like they were multi-core, and so we could farm out some of this work across multiple CPU cores. So it's think of if I had to wash a giant stack of dishes in one sink, it's going to be slower than if we had 4 sinks and 4 people doing the same dishes. Right? It's the same thing with a game. You've got this big stack of things you got to process by the computer, right? Whether it's AI, it's reading input from the player, drawing things to the screen, like simulating physics. All these things have to happen, right? And so we have just this giant pile of work. If we can farm that work out to more things to do the work at the same time, you get done faster, right? And so you can do more, right? And so we were getting to the point where that technology was making it into consoles. So this was kind of the driving point was PC gaming has always been kind of better than console gaming because PCs were always more powerful than consoles. And everybody was trying to build games for consoles. They would also ship them on the PC, but the PC would be handicapped, right? Because all the money's in the consoles. People are buying the consoles. They're not buying $2,000 gaming rigs. They're buying, like $300 PlayStation 2s and 3s and Xboxes and stuff like that. And that hardware wasn't able to do all this work like a computer could. But in the mid 2010s, they started to get the technology in these consoles to be much closer to a PC, and we could do these things like what you were asking, which is open worlds.
I mean, because it just blows my mind that you can look anywhere. All of a sudden, there's a little squirrel there on your left. Like, you can interact with the random squirrel and everything else around it. It's just like, it's almost like you're not even playing the game anymore. You're just seeing how many things you can interact with and see.
I mean, there's entire games that the entire point of it is exploration, right? Like, there's no like combat, like they're complete puzzle games. You think even back in the day, like Myst and stuff like that, like they're puzzle games. You're not even fighting anything really, right? It's about exploration and solving puzzles, and half the time you don't even run into anything. And I mean, there's like Talos Principle is a more modern era version of kind of like Myst, which is very puzzle oriented. You're not even running into other like characters or anything, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just the advent of technology to the point where we are now is there's just so many possibilities. So like open world is a thing. Microsoft, when I was working still over an Xbox, we were using cloud-based AI, meaning when you were playing Warzone or some of that stuff in Halo Infinite, we can send some of that information across the servers because you're connected online to do pathfinding and AI for the monsters, like the enemies, on the server and send that down. And so that allows us to do even more cool stuff in the game because the game doesn't have to spend time, like your console doesn't spend time doing the work for this. It's some server up in the cloud that's doing all the AI work for you and sending the information down. So now that frees us up to do more monsters, right? And to like add more things into the world and have more interactivity because we freed up a bunch of cycles.
There, people, if you've never played these games, it's like an entire world, like it's its own world. It's wild. We never really finished because I do want to get into exactly what you do and the creativity you put into your work. Just put a bow on it. So you had this internship and then.
Yep. So I had an internship, and I went to work on a game called Project Spark. It was kind of like a game creation game. So think like Minecraft meets Little Big Planet.
So like you're creating a game in the game?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And so like we had like a full suite of tools. You'd go into a world and you could like place like animals, creatures, like buildings. You could sculpt the terrain. We had all kinds of terrain sculpting tools. So you could like dig into the ground to create valleys, and like you could build upward to make mountains and all that kind of stuff. And then we had other tools where at a press of a button, it'll just generate a bunch of terrain for you, and it'll add like we use these like kind of cool noise denoise algorithms that they use for photography, which is trying to remove noise, the pixelated noise. We actually use those to generate noise that we would use to figure out where we wanted to put plains and dips and hills and stuff. Yeah,
that's so interesting.
Yeah, so we actually borrowed like some algorithmic technology from denoising to actually work opposite to generate noise, and then use that as the random placement for all of the topography of the map. Right?
Yeah.
So we had all kinds of cool stuff that we did there, and so I worked on that for a couple of years, and we ended up shipping that. I did my internship. Well, I jumped ahead of myself. I did my internship with 6 months, and they hired me for a full-time position.
Nice.
I wasn't even out of college. Hired me full-time, and so I did go back, and I finished my last bit of classes, and then I returned 3 months later. I only had one semester I needed left really to graduate. And so I took 3 months, finished schooling, came back, started in January of that year, and been doing games ever since. Wow. But Project Spark was super cool to like get into that as a starting point, because it wasn't necessarily a AAA title, so like there wasn't the pressure of like the giant high budget games, and there was a lot of freedom given to us because like this was one of those games where it was like we weren't sure what we were going to do with this, right? Like the concept was we had bought this bit of technology that was essentially the engine we were going to run it on. So like something like Unreal Engine, Unity game engine. Those are game engines that are kind of popular to people who've heard of. Well, this one wasn't. It was just a studio had built this as their prototyping thing for building games, and we bought it because of the interesting technology for sculpting that terrain. Right. So they had a lot of these tools, which they called voxel tools, that allowed you to basically deform and reform terrain within a cube. So basically, if you think of the world around us, you could divide everything in the world around us into a bunch of cubes, right? So that cube, it has at 100% volume, it's completely filled, right? It's a block. It's just like a story cube or anything like that. When you are only a partially filled, that percentage says that X amount is filled, but that X can be almost near infinite amount of dispersion, right? Like what does it mean to be a half full, right? It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a level, like you cut the thing in half horizontally or vertically, like it could be sculpted, right?
Right.
And so what we do is essentially we have each one of those squares is represented by like a mathematical formula that says how you distribute the volume that exists in that square. And gravity does the rest. And so once we've filled this thing, gravity will cause like the bits of sand, if you think of them as that, to settle, right? And that's how we do sculpting. Wow. We can say we want to remove this amount, right? We can suspend this sand in a pattern and then let it fall, right? You don't see any of this happen in the game. This is all just like what mathematically it's doing is essentially it's taking this thing and saying, okay, a grain of sand, the X amount of sand makes this whole thing. So at 100% full, let's say there's 100,000 grains of sand in there, right? If we say it's now 50% full, there's 50,000 grains of sand in there. So we can disperse that 50,000 grains of sand throughout that cube and then let gravity settle it down, and you'll get a different formation every time. It's just like throwing dirt up in the air when it lands. It's going to land in this kind of different pattern, like a different hill, a different, right? And so that's kind of what the idea of like that voxel technology was. Now there's a lot more. That's a simple, oversimplified version of it, but that's essentially how it works. And so we bought this technology, and we're like, we don't know what we're going to do with it yet, right? We knew we wanted to do something that was a creativity thing, like that would have a community of players that would go in and be able to build things with it, create with it, but we didn't know how far we wanted to go. Like Little Big Planet, you're on a very small set of rails of what you can create, whereas Minecraft, you're on a bigger set of rails, right? Like we didn't want Minecraft, but we didn't want Little Big Planet. We would kind of in the middle, right? And so we ended up building this game that is all about using these tools to sculpt terrain, build out the things you want, add programming to it. So we had a visual programming language that was cause and effect related.
Okay.
It was very easy for children to understand.
So were there missions to this, or it's just you build and see what happens?
So we did have a gamified version. So there was a campaign. We called it Adventureland, that you would go in and it was one part tutorial and 2 parts guided experience through the game. And so we gamify creating things, right? So like at first it was just like, here's how you generate some kind of interesting world out of nothing, right? Like so that the person that goes into the very first level and they create brand new blank level, it's just like, what am I doing with this? It's just a ground as far as I can see. So like you would go in an adventure world it would use that noise thing I was talking about where it would build the level for you. It would work you through how to do that, right? And like then you would get these quests that would pop up to go do a thing, and right? And so instead of the quest being like, oh, gather like this or go like fight these things, it was like, go find this tool that so and so lost in the woods. You'll have a little bit of combat, so it's a little fun, but then you'll find a tool, and that tool is something you use to build in the game. Okay. Right. And so like now your quest is, oh, you just found the tunneling tool. Well, hey, I hear that there's this cool cave that like got buried by this like avalanche, whatever, and like let's use the tool to go explore, right? And so then you'll dig your way down.
There's no like there's no finish in this game. It's just you just live this life in this game.
Correct. And then like so that's kind of like the gamified experience, but then there's just what's called UGC, which is a lot like what Fortnite has. Where you create these things in the game and you upload them and anybody can play them, right? Like, and so you'll get like somebody will create like we had somebody did the trench run from A New Hope, right? Yeah. And so like they cobbled together X-Wings and TIE fighters out of these like random props that we have for you to be able to place in a world, like doors and stuff. And they built these things and this whole Death Star, and you had the whole trench run, right? And the creativity was like off the charts. It was a super awesome project. And I learned a ton because it was a smaller team. It was kind of felt like an indie game inside of Xbox. And so like I got to work on a lot of different things and grow my skill set quite a bit there in a way that I wouldn't have if I was at like, 343 working on Halo or something like that, because those are very much like, this is a money printing machine.
We will tell you what to do and you will type it.
You are going to do what benefits the company best.
So I want to know in general, like a day of work for you, because Don and we started this podcast to find out where people use their creativity and how how they express themselves through this medium. What is a normal day for you like? Where do you get to use your creativity? Because I know you're not the artist creating the characters or the levels. That you explained to me. But please, if you could explain what you do from there.
Sure. So right now, a day in the life of Tom is actually a wild ride on this Disney project. So every game kind of has phases, right? So like there's what's considered the ideation and prototyping phase, which is like, hey, we have this high level pitch. So think of it as like the elevator pitch for a movie or something, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's just like not even a script. It's just a pitch, right? Mm-hmm. And so from that stage, you gotta build the equivalent of a script, which is, well, what is this thing going to be, right? Right? Like, and it's not an easy parallel to script like filmmaking. So don't think of it that way. Like, we're not writing a story, but we're filling in the gaps of like, okay, so we want to make a game that is like a spy game that's like John Wick meets the Matrix. Let's say that's the pitch, right? Well, what does that mean? Like, it sounds fun, sign me up. But like, what does that mean? Like, what's the gameplay? Like, what type of game? Is it going to be open world? Do we want to have it more linear? Because Matrix is more linear. They're in these tunnels and stuff, right? Like, it's not really a more open world conducive kind of game. Whereas John Wick, definitely open world, go all over the place, right? And so ideation and prototyping is trying to figure out what is it that we want to build, right? And so that's where this project at Disney is at, right? Like we know like we're partnered with Disney, Disney invested money, and so it's like, well, what do we want to build, right? And so we're in this ideation and prototyping phase. And so this is the time where people like me, who's an engineer, gets to actually do a lot of creativity, because we're trying to all together figure out different aspects of this game, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so my job right now on a day-to-day is kind of like we have a brainstorming channel that we, are posting different ideas. And so it's just grabbing some of these ideas and actually like building a little something in the game, right? I don't need to be an artist to do this, right? Like, I need to have some design mentality, but I mean, I've developed that as a skill over the years. And so like, I'll build a little prototype, right? And like, I'll steal art from, Fortnite or the Disney assets we have. I'll steal what I need and do what they call kit bashing, which is like basically taking bits and pieces from other kits, other things that like exist together as a whole, pull little pieces, put them together to make something that you could play and get an idea of, is this even going to be fun, right? Mm. It's not about the visuals about that point. It's about the gameplay, right? And so like, one example is I was kind of exploring what is it like to do combat type of things as Elsa, right? Like, Elsa's traditionally like defensive magic, right? But like, what could it look like if she has to be more offensive, right? And so like, I'm stealing Marvel stuff, like I'm stealing assets here and there to try and experiment. Well, what's it like if she can do some cool things like create like a shield of ice and throw it like, Captain America would do or something like that, right? Like, and so like creating those kind of ideas and just testing them out is kind of my day-to-day right now is figuring out, like, we're trying to find the fun, right? And once we can figure out like, well, what are the fun things to do, like what do we want to include in the game, that's when like we can put on more focused hats and we can say, okay, cool, so like this particular ice thing is really awesome. What's the tech we need like to put into place so that we're not stealing these other things and it's not this janky kind of like experience that's not, Elsa, right? Like, and so those are the kind of things that you have to think about. And that's, I mean, my day-to-day is that now. It's not typical day-to-day games. This only lasts for so long. Then you actually have to ship a thing. When you get to those, then creativity shifts around a little bit. Some engineers are very engineer focused, right? Like they just work on solving problems in technical senses, and they don't really participate a lot in the design side of it, which is fine. There's no expectation.
The two don't go hand in hand together?
They don't have to, but they can,
Okay.
And that's kind of what I'm getting at. So for me, I enjoy the design side of it. And so I tend to interject more there and participate more in those design meetings and be like kind of that bridge between design, art, and engineering, right? Like, so that's where I like to live because I am creative and I do like to have that vision. I just can't draw, right? Like, that's just not my skill set. Like, give me a camera and I will take you some amazing pictures and do some awesome film work. But like, that's the medium I'm able to do, right? Yeah. I can't draw or digital draw. And so like, in order to be creative in games, I've had to get creative with my skill set, which is to do more design related things. And so like I tend to do a lot more conversations with like our player team, like, which is like all about like how does the player interface with the game, the NPC teams on, which is where I'm currently at, is NPC team, trying to figure out how to make NPCs in the game more interesting, right? Like, so that you like want to go talk to them.
Can you explain what an NPC is for those?
NPCs are non-player characters, so
which they play a big role in games.
They absolutely do. So if I was playing as Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, NPCs would be like Obi-Wan and Darth Vader and Han Solo, and although they're all the supporting actors, and you're the star, right?
And so you want those supporting actors to act as if they're not NPCs, right?
Exactly.
If they're just living in this world.
Yeah, you don't want it's putting up that fourth wall, right? Like, it's kind of like a pro wrestling and stuff, where it's like you have that fourth wall, which is the wall between the reality and the perceived reality, the story, right? And so like NPCs, a lot of people are used to like just jamming the space bar or the A button to get through the dialogue because they don't care anymore. Well, so I'm trying to work on teams where all of a sudden you don't want to do that.
You want to read what these NPCs
because, like,
are saying.
They have interesting things to say. They want to engage with you, right? Like, and that's just kind of a push in games all up, where it's like NPCs aren't anymore just this like sideshow thing, but they need to like make it feel real and immersive. And in order to do that, you can't have an NPC who like says the exact same thing to you as to someone else, right?
Right.
But if you have NPCs that are smart enough to be like, oh, hey, I like your hair today, like blah, blah, blah. Like, and you say, it's like, pick up something about your character and go with it. Yeah. Like, now it becomes real. Now it's kind of like, oh, they're actually talking to me. This isn't just canned dialogue.
Yes.
Right. And so that's kind of like the future of games, and things like ChatGPT and large language models and all this kind of AI stuff is where now a lot of that's hotness is. It's like, oh, what can we do with this stuff to make all aspects of a game interesting, right?
Very cool.
And so like we're doing a lot of like that kind of stuff. I was doing that at Xbox and now over at Epic, of like how do we make the game itself more interesting rather than just what is hand authored, right?
Very cool. So I gotta know, man, like, are you looking to do the next Halo sequel? What? I know you're deep into this Disney project right now, but where do you see your future in the gaming world?
Right here. So I've shipped Halo 4. I shipped Halo Wars 2. I basically shipped Halo Infinite. And so like I did my Halo time.
Yeah.
I worked on Perfect Dark at Microsoft. It's not out yet, but I worked with there.
Wait, Perfect Dark? That's not an old. That's
the old game.
Oh,
the old
I
game.
played the old one.
Yeah, back on Nintendo 64. Well, it's being remade. Well, not remade, rebooted, right? So whole new game, whole new like moved into the future of Perfect Dark.
Oh
like
man,
Dark's back. Yeah, so
I enjoyed that one.
I worked on that for several years before I left to work on the Disney project.
Cool.
So I've put my time into the more traditional AAA games, and trust me, the Disney thing is AAA. If the price tag, how much they've invested in Epic, it should say that, right?
Disney has money.
Yeah, Disney has a little bit of money.
Okay, good.
And so it's going to be a giant thing, but it's a very new thing. Like I can't really talk about that stuff, but like it's a rethinking of what digital entertainment can be, right? And that's really where I want to be, right? Is on that cutting edge of what is the next generation of like interactive entertainment, right? Like what is the next big thing in video games? It's not VR. Sorry for the fanboys of
VR is fun for a moment, but nothing like sitting down with your boys or even by yourself and just having that controller.
And it's not even just that. Like, VR will still play play a role in the future of games, but it's not going to be about like what you play your game on. It's going to be where and how you play your game, right? So like the where is out in the world these days, right? Like when you're talking about things like Pokemon Go and like Monster Hunter Now, these are mobile games where you're out there, like, and the point is to go out into the world, right? Like that's not going anywhere anytime soon. Like that's a huge untapped potential market, right? And so like that's more about where are you going to play your game?
Right.
It doesn't always have to be in front of a PC or in front of a TV. Like the future's mobile, man. Like,
do you think it'll lean more towards the, like, augmented reality? And
it's
like,
gonna definitely. I think it's gonna be. So metaverse gets thrown around a lot, and I hate that freaking word. But the concept of metaverse is more what I think is going to be applicable to the future of gaming, which means it's a cohesive ecosystem of products and devices and such that all kind of play together, right?
Okay.
So if you could envision a world where let's say my daughter, she's really into playing Mario Kart, right? On the Nintendo Switch at home. She loves doing that. And, you know, I don't have as much time to sit there, but, you know, like when I'm out and about, I'm constantly playing mobile games. And so let's say there's like, I know this is leaning on Nintendo, but Nintendo's a good way to kind of explain this. And none of this is real, so anyone who's listening, I don't have insider information. But this is a pie in the sky dream world that we're in. But if you think of it, so like I'm now mobile, right? Like I'm out and about, like running some errands, and I want to just, you know, play a puzzle game. Let's say I pull up a Mario puzzle game or a Zelda game or something in the Nintendo ecosystem, or Kirby, for instance, right? Like maybe there's back in the day there was Yoshi's Cookie and like Dr. Mario. So think like those kind of games.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just playing along and I'm earning rewards and stuff, right? And then like I earn enough rewards, and imagine a screen will pop up and it'll show my friends and family and their rewards and stuff. And I can see my daughter, like she's only, you know, X amount of credits away from unlocking Chrome Peach in the game, right?
Yeah.
I've got those. I just gift it to her and like she can go get the thing, right? That's the future of games, where you're talking about it is a metaverse. It is an ecosystem of things that is all interconnected. And now that game is brought to everyone, right? And not in necessarily the same way. Like some of those might be puzzle things that's more aimed at like my wife or me out and about. And then there might be a VR experience that's more aimed at like, you know, my oldest daughter, because she just got a Quest 3 and wants to play it. And then there's like a really easy kind of casual game that would be good for my 5-year-old and she could play it. But we're all playing in the same ecosystem, earning the same credits and rewards that all ties back when we want to play together, right? And that's kind of, to me, the future of games is finding that secret sauce, that magic of bringing the entire family together, but not expecting you all to play the same games, because I might like to play first-person shooters that are violent, but I'm not going to have my 8-year-old daughter playing that, right?
Right.
But like, is there a way that I can still play that, have fun, and still participate and contribute to her fun? And then when we decide to play together in that same ecosystem, like we're bringing those experiences together, right? Like,
I love that, man, because when I think about the future of gaming, I figure you'd say better graphics, better VR, whatever. But what you're talking about is gaming, bringing people together, getting people out, and doing all those things that the stereotypes of video games just completely.
It seems like I don't want to cut you off
No,
there,
no.
but it seems like gaming has always sort of looked more towards community building, like, and you know, even with like the Pokemon Go or like the multiplayer, you know, like
GoldenEye.
RPGs, like GoldenEye. Like World of Warcraft had a similar thing where you could share resources and stuff like that. So I think it's really interesting to think of this scenario that you were talking about where you have this greater community that are able to resource share, you know, and still go about and do their own thing, you know, follow their own interests.
well, and this is already actually starting to happen now. So Monster Hunter is a pretty big franchise in games. And so Monster Hunter now is the Pokemon Go equivalent, right? On the phone, out and about, going to different locations in the real world to fight monsters, collect things. And so it's taken off. And I played it for quite a bit for a while, but I've kind of fallen off of it for a while now. But like you would just, go about and do all this stuff. Well, Monster Hunter Wilds just came out. So that's the new Monster Hunter game. And there's tie-ins between the two of them, right? So like as certain things are dropping in Monster Hunter Wilds, there's a corresponding thing that's showing up for you to collect and earn toward in Monster Hunter Now on the phone, right? And so you're already kind of seeing this in these ecosystems. Xbox does this a little bit with the Xbox platform. So Xbox itself, like Xbox Live, the service, is sort of kind of hitting that metaverse level at this point where it tracks and knows like what games you like, what games your friends like, what games your family likes, and like how can we enable you to know when your friends are online playing the games that you like and filter out when they're playing games you don't like, right? Or they're playing games that you do like but you don't own it, and maybe you didn't know it came out. Like it'll let you know, right? Like, hey, so and so is playing this new game, just came out, like, do you want to add it to your wish list, right? Like that's it's already almost a metaversey thing in that ecosystem. Epic does this with Epic Game Store. Steam does this with all the Steam stuff. Like these things all kind of exist, but they exist as platforms of games rather than as a cohesive ecosystem of IP, right? So intellectual property. The companies that are smart and have been doing this kind of more broadly with IPs are things like Hasbro, right? So Hasbro, they own Magic the Gathering, they own Dungeons and Dragons through Wizards of Warcraft, or Wizards of the Coast, and plus their toy brands, right? And so like they kind of have this collection of this collection of IP that they try to bring into video games, right? They try to have crossover things. Lego has done a really good job of this, where Lego has that whole giant IP ecosystem with like Indiana Jones, and Star Wars, and like Ninja Turtles, and so like you have Fortnite crossed over with Lego, and we have Lego Fortnite, which has all the Lego IP.
I just
which
got one
also,
for my kid's birthday. Yep.
Right, which also brings in Star Wars now, which isn't even Lego IP, but it brings it in because you just get all these collaborations that start crashing together, and then you're just like, wow, there's so much that you can interconnect together, right?
So cool, man.
And and companies are doing this. You're seeing it. Everybody's talking about it. Epic's talking about it. Xbox, Facebook, all of them are talking about it. And that's to me the future of gaming, is this connected, cohesive experience across multiple different devices and products.
So exciting, dude. Can I ask, I got two more questions. Are we good? Yeah. All right. The first one is this, is that I know that Don, he's a very talented artist. So when he looks at people's art, he sees it in a way that I wouldn't. For me with pro wrestling, once I got into the game and worked many shows, I can't look at it as the fan I once did. What about you, man? Are you able to play games just and have a good time, or are you critiquing?
So it is a little bit of a double-edged sword. So they always say, don't meet your heroes. I say, don't play on the games you love. Because you pull back the curtains and you start to see the actual monsters in the closet. And, I experienced that with Halo and stuff like that, where it wasn't the fantasy I dreamed up in my mind. Right. Not to say my time was bad there. I absolutely loved my time there. I enjoyed shipping the game, like super proud of it. But it definitely is a wake up call when you get there and you're like, oh, this is not at all what I expected life to be working on a big game like this. Right.
Yeah.
And so like there's that aspect of it, but then there's also the aspect of like games in general. Right. So I've gone through a couple stages in my career where I played no games because I was just burnt out. Like when we shipped Halo 5 and I was like working all those hours, like I didn't want to see a controller. Like I didn't care if it was an Xbox controller, PlayStation controller. I didn't care.
Wow.
Mouse and keyboard, I certainly didn't want to see one of those. I've been typing at it all day. So it's like you just get real burnout. And so like there was a period of time where I'd played no games for about a year and a half.
Give me a book.
Yeah, it was like I got back into photography and films and stuff because I was like, I need a break that has nothing to do with games. And so like those are the times when this career becomes a job, right? And you feel it. And I do get this like critiquing thing too. Like this will happen. So some games I'm able to look past it because they're just great games, right? So like Borderlands, huge fan of the Borderlands franchise. Like absolutely those games. Never even once did I break immersion from myself of playing
It's like
the game.
when I'm watching a really good match and I can just like get lost in it.
Right. And so like that'll happen for some games. But then there'll be other games where it's like, I'll definitely be judging it, or I'll definitely be critiquing aspect, or be like, "Oh man, some engineer dropped the ball on this because this is janky," or like, "Man, this user interface is terrible. What like who designed this?"
Yeah.
Like I'll definitely experience that ever since being in the games industry.
So you can go either way.
Yeah. And I will say I will try to break games a lot more now than I did back in the day.
You will try to what?
Break, like get into spots in games you're not supposed to. Like people do this all the time. You can see it on YouTube and everything, where people are trying to like break the level, or they're trying to like fall through the maps, like try to find all the areas.
Oh,
that
that's
glitch
so
and stuff.
cool, man.
I do this all the time, only because like I know the places to look, because I know the places that are difficult that these bugs crop up in, and I want to see how good they were.
That's hilarious.
How tight
dude.
they were on their quality control.
And so, final question from me is, you've been doing this for a minute now. Do you have one thing you would look back on and say was the thing that you're most proud of since you started this profession?
Yes. So the most proud of I would be was so when I was back on Project Spark, we volunteer a lot at Xbox, at least some of us do, and get into give back programs and stuff like that. And I actually taught at Drexel for a little while. So I like to kind of give back to the next community of game developers. So I'll go do talks at like Drexel University and UPenn, and I'll just go and kind of, spread the passion that I have for game development to those that are interested, right? But to also ground them, right? Like to make them realize that this is a career choice. Like it is a job at the end of the day. And like, you need to be smart about where you pick, especially in this day and age with all these studio closures and layoffs. Like you need to be smart with your money, be smart with your decisions, and developing your career and all that kind of stuff. And so I did a lot of career coaching and everything. And back on Project Spark, I was still pretty fresh. I was only in a couple of years at that point. And they had a program. It was kind of like a STEM program where they brought in high schoolers in for a boot camp. And they were using Project Spark as a part of this boot camp for basically 2 weeks to build some games, right? And just learn a little bit about programming without actually programming, because it's a visual programming language. And so I volunteered to run these sessions, like to be one of the engineers, one of the devs there to help the students and like get them going in the game, answering questions and just that kind of stuff, right? And so I had met a couple of students there, and there was this one girl who, she was just so like overwhelmed by it, and she's like she had the passion, but like she was intimidated by like just like the programming side of it. And so like I worked with her, and I spent a lot of time with her specifically because most of the other students were just kind of picking it up. And so I spent a lot of time with her and in chatting. And the most rewarding moment was after all that was done, and she's like, one day I'm going to be a game developer. It made me proud, maybe even more proud to see her at a Microsoft or new hire orientation 3 years later, and she recognized me, and she's working over at Xbox right now.
That's awesome.
As a professional educator, that being your most proud moment makes me so happy, man.
Yes. I mean, to me, like, I very much have the mentality to leave this world better than I found it, right? And so if I can do that with my skill set and like my voice, I absolutely will. And so that's why I go to these colleges, and because game development, there's the shininess, right? So there's truly two categories of people that try to get into game development. There's the I love to play video games, so therefore I want to make video games, and it's shiny and it sounds like a fun game. And then there's the others that have the chops, the creativity, and the drive and the passion to make it through all of the hurdles that you're going to have in your way that this other group won't. Because they're going to realize that it's hard and it's not all fun and games, and they're just going to go back to playing games. Whereas this other passionate person who loves to play games but is passionate about the creativity and understands that it is like it's work and it's a decision, those are the ones that you want to help nurture, right? And filtering that out can be very difficult. And I'll still help Group A, but like the reality is Group A is not going to make it, whereas Group B will, right?
Yeah.
I can tell you that like if I wasn't so committed to this, like there was a handful of times I could have gone and done something different in software engineering and probably made twice what I make right now. And like you have to realize it. It's not about the money. It's about your passion and what makes you happy and what is your legacy that you leave behind.
Well, that's why we brought you on the show, man. It's like when I was talking to him at this birthday party, I could just see him light up. Like I was like, this is a dude who not only does the coolest job, but he loves with his heart doing this job.
I mean, most of us do. Like my LinkedIn is constantly filled with either elation at what they're doing or utter sadness because either the project's done and they shipped the game or they got laid off or something. Like it's always that, because like it's just the extremes of emotion, because most people that get into this, like, you have to be passionate about this.
Yeah.
You don't have to be passionate about social media to go work at Facebook on their algorithms and stuff, right? Or Meta, whatever it is these days. Like, or go work at Netflix.
You gotta understand what the gamers want, right?
Well, I mean, it's some of that, and it's some of good games are made by people that are passionate, and you can tell the games that were made by people who's were dead inside. Because the games themselves are dead inside.
Wow.
You can tell the ones that are burnt out, that are like under the thumb of some kind of corporation, are being told they have to do what they don't want to do and the passion's gone. You can see it in the game immediately.
For some reason, the opposite of that, the first game that comes to my mind is Portal. I feel like those guys were all in.
So Portal was originally done. Remember I mentioned DigiPen? Portal was a DigiPen project by the students at DigiPen. It started out as that.
Do you know about Portal?
Of course, I know about Portal.
Yeah, that started as a. That's why it's so. That's why you're saying what you are.
Yeah, they are passionate.
That is their.
You could
creation.
tell as you're playing it. It is a passion project. From the moment you start till the song at the end of the friggin' game, it was a true passion project. Any other questions for Tom, dude?
No, I just, the thing that I was thinking about is how much there seems to be a correlation, like even back from when you were working as like an auto mechanic, is like to get under the hood and see how things work and how things get put together, and that there's like that sort of framework, those building blocks that create a whole system, like seem to be following you through all of your work.
So that is I'll come back to my father, who's unfortunately not around with us anymore, but he always said I was going to be an engineer because that's how I was, right? Like when I was a kid, I would take my toys apart to figure out how they worked and then put them back together again, right? Like I love director sets and like Legos. Like I would get the Hess trucks and I would take the Hess trucks apart to see how they work and then put them back. Meanwhile, like my grandmother's over there literally losing her mind. This is a collectible Hess truck that I'm taking the wheels off of. Meanwhile, my dad's like, keep doing it, learn all those things.
Yeah, man.
And yeah, I mean, it's the engineering mindset.
Yeah.
When I was working on cars, I always approach everything from a problem solving perspective, right? Like, what's the problem at hand, and how can I creatively solve this in the best way possible? That's literally being an engineer, right? Like, instead of me figuring out, how I'm going to get this broken bolt that's broken off into the engine block out, instead of figuring that out, I'm trying to figure out how can I squeeze 2 more milliseconds out of our game loop so that we can get just that much more into the game, or we can make this one level performant enough that it feels good, right? Like it's really about problem solving, and that's something I've always excelled at, and why it was a natural path. And even with photography and filmmaking, like even my creative aspects are very much about problem solving, right? Like the parts that interest me most about like filmmaking is the cinematography angle, right? Like which is the technical. It's this director has this grandiose vision of this thing. Well, how do we actually get that into something you can watch, right? Like there's a ton of technical that's behind that for the director of photography, the cinematographer to figure out, right? And so like I've always excelled in that, and that's why the art paths that I've gone down have always been still this very technical way, because that's just how my brain thinks, right? Like I create with science and with technical mindset behind it to give a vision that like I can either see in my head or someone has given me, right? And like that's how any artist does this, right? Like when my daughter's like, I'm going to draw a Pokemon, right? She has a vision of what Pokemon's going to look like, and then she draws it. And I'm just like enamored by the fact that Charlotte can do these things because I'm just like, I have a vision of this awesome thing that I want, and I draw a stick figure for you. And I'm like, there it is, guys. And so like that was why I leaned on like photography and stuff like that, because that's more about capturing what's real and around you and or made up if it's posed and stuff. And so games is very much an extension of filmmaking. It really is. In fact, like a lot of our production cycles, how we think about developing a game, how we think about what does cinematics look like, camera angles, the technology we're going to need to build a game. We're really building interactive movies when you think about it. I mean, it's obviously not live act. Well, actually, it is
some
live
of my
actors.
favorite campaigns.
It is live actors, but they're just not live.
Some
in
of
the
those
game.
campaigns that have the best stories, those are the ones I'll never forget.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, we're hitting the graphic ceiling. At this point, it's not about how much prettier can we make the game.
Oh,
Because
really?
We've already got photorealistic games now with ray tracing and the stuff like Cyberpunk. If you go play Cyberpunk
wow.
like with ray tracing on, you're in the world.
So it's not getting any better. This is what we got.
I mean, I'm not going to say that it's not going to get better. I mean, with quantum computing, who knows in the future? But like with the technology on right now, we're pretty plateaued. And really, what gamers want, like they don't come out and say it. You hear the vocal minority of like, I want to see like the glistening ice on the windshield, and it needs to reflect exactly like like you get some of these that are like that. But most people, what they want is they want something fresh, right? They want to play something new.
Yeah.
This is why games like Pokemon Go and Monster Hunter now, I know I keep coming back to them, took off because it's a totally new way.
I would say
play
Portal
Pokemon.
too, right?
Portal,
like something completely different.
These games became so attractive because they were so different, right?
And fun.
And so really now the next evolution is how do we get to the next different, right? Movies are struggling with this. We're constantly with reboots, right?
Sure.
Video games, we're in the same cycle. You're seeing more and more reboots. Like the creativity's gone because like we've hit that tech ceiling. We've plateaued, and we're like, we can't make it any prettier, right? All we can do is throw more and more into the game.
Yeah.
But that's not really, I think, what gamers want. Because it's not what I want. I don't want more in the game. I want more ways to enjoy my game, right? Like, I'm a parent. I can't sit in front of my computer and play Doom for hours on end like I did when I was in my teens, right? And so, like, the Steam Deck, which you are going to love, by the way. I
can't wait, brother. We got a trade going on over here, people.
My backup Steam Deck that you're going to have, you're going to see how my life has changed, right? Because sure, we had the Nintendo Switch. I enjoy the Switch, but I still love my PC games, right?
Yeah.
And so the second that Valve had announced the Steam Deck, I was like, yeah, if this is actually going to work, this is going to be amazing. I was hugely skeptic, but it's like, I'm buying it day one. You're getting the day one, by the way, bud.
Thank you, brother. I've researched. Apparently, it works very well.
It does. It didn't when it first came out. There was the rocky road. But it's to a point now where it's like, it's life-changing. There was a period since I had my second daughter, Amelia, which you already know is a handful after your school.
I've met her once or twice.
The child barbarian. Love you.
She makes a good duo with my daughter, the Princess Warrior.
Oh, yes, they do. But like... Yeah. So after we had her, like gaming became much more difficult, right? Because Charlotte was getting old enough where I could play games, but then we had another newborn, right?
Yeah.
And now we have two kids in the house. Lisa's like, I'm not giving up. Like you're not getting into your game mode and
Put
leaving
the
the kids
system
to
down,
me,
boy.
right? You can play late at night, which doesn't always.
You
work.
end up passing out like me.
Yeah.
I know it.
Then I got older. I was like, well, I can't do this. I'm like, I can't stay up past like 12:30, 1 o'clock now.
Damn, 12:31.
Oh my god.
So the Steam Deck changed my life in that way, that like it brought passion back into games for me as a gamer, because I was able to like bring it to the couch and play a lot of the games that I was used to playing on my PC.
Hell yeah. Hey, Don.
Yeah.
We have brought in one of the guys who makes it happen in the video game world. What do you say?
It's a pleasure, Tom. Absolute pleasure meeting you, hearing a little bit about your story. Really appreciate you coming on.
I was more than happy to come on.
Yeah, dude, that was a blast. And of course, my son has 5,000 questions for you, 4,999 about Fortnite, no doubt. But yeah, so this was the easy part. Upcoming's the next, the difficult interview. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for Tom. I think I have a button here for that.
That ain't
Oh,
it.
wait, I can turn the volume. There it is. Give it up for Tom.